The Bear Season 2 opens shortly after Season 1 ends. The beef sign is being taken down because the restaurant is transforming into a fine dining establishment called The Bear. The financial burden of this transition is no small matter. Despite the discovery of $300,000 hidden by Mikey in tomato cans, the team still needs an additional $500K. They turn to Uncle Jimmy for help, promising to repay him in 18 months, or if they fail, he can take ownership of everything, including the building and the equipment. Carmy just threw the timeline out there without giving it much thought, which is insane because Sugar estimates they won't open for 6 months and it will take 9 months to turn a profit. Sydney is in charge of putting the staff together for the restaurant, and she is partnering with Carmy to get the place off the ground. It's clear early on that they have divergent goals regarding the restaurant's focus. Sydney wants what Carmy has achieved. She wants a Michelin star, but Carmy tells her it's a trap. He's been there before, and it led him to a mental breakdown. Sydney doesn't view a Michelin star this way. She views it as proof that she's succeeded in the business. She's doing this for herself after she failed with her initial catering company, but she also wants to prove that she's a success to her father. Carmy sums up the dad's misgivings about the restaurant industry, saying, "It's probably hard for your dad to be supportive because he doesn't understand the job doesn't pay much, doesn't amount to anything, and doesn't make a whole lot of sense." Carmy and Sydney are trying to put together a menu for the Bear, which is a tall order because they're starting from scratch. Richie is struggling with his place in all this because he doesn't see himself as somebody who has any skills, and he feels the people around him are leaving him behind. He tells Carmy as much, and it's clear he views himself as a mid-40s loser who lacks focus or purpose in his life. Sydney informs Tina and Ebra that the restaurant will be sending them to culinary school to train up for the new venture. The two view this differently. Ebra views this change with fear and is hesitant to embrace this, while Tina fully embraces the opportunity. The group runs into their first hurdle when mold is found in the walls and they have to take the place down to the studs. Later that evening, Sydney has dinner with her father, and he's trepidatious about her working in the restaurant industry because, in his words, the backup plan is now the only plan. He says he's worried because he reads about restaurants closing all the time, and he isn't wrong. This is a really tough market for restaurants right now. A lot of previously successful restaurants are closing in the area. That same night, Carmy runs into Claire, his high school crush, at the grocery store. She's a doctor in residency now, and she asks him for his phone number because she's obviously interested in him. For some reason, Carmy gives her a fake number, even though they clearly have chemistry. One day, when Sydney and Carmy are working on the menu, she proposes to Carmy that they send Marcus to Copenhagen so the Bear can have good desserts, which most restaurants don't have. He agrees, and he says he knows some people there. Carmy suggests that he and Sydney go out and try some stuff because their palates are messed up, and it's leading to their early struggles in creating the new menu. Carmy says he's going to clean up, and he'll meet Sid at Kazuma in an hour. Tina and Ebra are starting at culinary school, and Tina is thriving while Ebra is struggling to start. He eventually just stops showing up altogether. Sydney goes to Kazuma, and when Carmy is cleaning up, he gets a call from Claire, who is angry because he gave her a fake number. She ends up getting Carmy's real number from FAC, and they talk some, and she says she needs a favor because her cousin bailed on her. Claire says she needs some help moving some boxes, and Carmy says he's in. Carmy then texts Sydney that he's going to have to bail, so it looks like he's blowing her off. Sydney takes the rest of the day looking for inspiration by going to restaurants around town, sampling food, and talking to owners about what she's doing. Many of them mention to her that she needs to work with a partner that she trusts, because they've been burned in the past and they don't want her to make the same mistake. Sydney also calls Marcus to see if anyone has showed up to apply for work at the Bear, and no one has. Hiring staff is really difficult at the moment, and she even tries to poach some people from behind another restaurant. The remodel at this point is not going great. FAC is failing the suppression test, and he can't figure out why. Without a passing grade on the suppression test, the restaurant cannot open. Marcus goes to Copenhagen to learn how to make desserts, and we are introduced to an individual who will be training him. His name is Luca, and he knows Carmy from back in the day. Marcus is struggling because he is away from his ailing mother, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Marcus and Luca begin to connect, and he asks Luca how he got so good at this. Luca says he started early and he got his skills up, and he was the best cook everywhere he went, until he ran into this one guy who was much better than him. But he says it was a blessing in disguise because it took the pressure off him. He continues by saying that a good chef at a certain stage is less about skills and more about being open to the world, yourself, and other people. Inspiration is outside of the restaurant, not inside of it. This point is in stark contrast to Carmy, who is hyper-focused on his work. We are now 6 weeks away from the opening day. Carmy is continuing to blow Sydney off when it comes to developing the menu, because he's spending so much time with Claire now. Claire and Carmy kiss after a house party, and Claire asks Carmy when's the last time he went to a party, and he has to think about it, and he says, I think, never? This response shows how hyper-focused he is on his work, and he always has been. At this point, we have a flashback to 256 weeks before the restaurant opens. We are at the Berzatto house for Christmas Eve dinner. The dinner is hectic, and the tension in the air is palpable. Donna Berzatto is a ball of stress. She's making 7 fish dishes, which is an Italian-American tradition. She's also making a handful of other items, and she is so tense that it makes you tense just watching her. We see the environment in which Carmy grew up in, and it makes sense why he works in a stressful environment where perfection is not good enough. Outside the kitchen, things aren't any less stressful. Mikey, who looks like he might be on something, is feuding with Uncle Lee, who seems like a real jerk. We also see Richie talking to Uncle Jimmy about getting him a job, because he doesn't want to work at the beef shop his whole life. It's sad to see, because given that now in the current day he feels like a failure with no skills, he was trying, but he failed to avoid this future. When everyone sits down to eat, Uncle Lee and Mikey continue their argument from earlier, and it escalates to Mikey throwing forks at Lee until they go after each other. Donna leaves the dinner table and goes outside after Sugar asks her if she's okay. She doesn't like this, and it triggers her when she's asked if she's okay, although she's clearly not. The dinner ends with Donna crashing her car through the living room wall because she's highly intoxicated. Back to current day, we see Richie getting up when his alarm goes off at 5:38 a.m. Richie goes into a very high-end looking restaurant, and he doesn't seem happy to be there. It happens to be a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant, which is one of the best in the world. This begins the Forks episode, which may be one of the best episodes of television I've seen in a while. We meet Garrett, who's in charge of showing Richie the ropes. His first duty is to polish forks, which he hates. If he does well at this, he might move on to spoons. Richie thinks he's being punished by Carmy. He complains to the point that Garrett takes him outside to talk with him, and he tells him how much he loves working at this restaurant. He says every day is like the Super Bowl here. This experience is reinforcing to Richie that he's lost. He's 45 years old, and he's polishing forks. To knock him down even lower, he gets a call from his ex-wife, and he tells her that he got the Taylor Swift tickets. He's got 3 of them if his ex-wife wants to come. It's heartbreaking because right after this, she tells him that she's getting married, and it's clear that he still loves her, so he's gutted. Richie walks in the next day, and he's not on forks anymore. He sees a suit at his station because he's trailing. He says the suit feels like armor, and it's clear he likes it. Richie begins learning the intricacies of service in a high-end restaurant. He gets hooked, and after a discussion with owner Terry, he realizes that he's good at this, and service is what he wants to be doing with his life. He also learns that Carmy didn't send him there to punish him. He sent him there because he believes in him. Richie's conversation with Terry is where we learn the meaning behind the sign, "Every second counts." It's the way her father used to end his journal entries, and it's a major theme in the second season. We are now 2 weeks from opening, and Ibrahim faces his fears and he comes back to work at the restaurant. The final thing they need to do is pass the fire suppression test, which they have failed multiple times. If they don't pass this, they won't be able to open. Vac realizes that Mikey was planning to burn down the restaurant for the insurance money, so he overrode the fire suppression system so the gas wouldn't shut off. Once he fixes this, they pass the test. Carmy and Claire are getting very serious at this point, with Carmy even saying that he has to call his girlfriend, something he was unwilling to do earlier. Carmy is also having panic attacks with all the stress surrounding the restaurant, Claire, and his family dynamics. He has been dropping the ball on some things like kitchen equipment, including fixing the freezer door. At this point, Uncle Jimmy talks to him about unforced errors, and tells Carmy that the restaurant business sucks, and he can't afford to take his eye off the ball. He has to be all in. After hearing that, Carmy says he's been dating someone, to which Jimmy replies, "Uh-oh." Sugar is also exhausted, and she hasn't eaten, and Sydney offers to make her something. Sugar says she's like an omelet, and we see in the care that Sydney puts into the omelet how much, just like Richie, she gets from the act of service. In the finale, the Bear opens for its dress rehearsal. They will be doing a 9-course tasting menu. The kitchen begins to fall behind in orders, partly because Josh, the new hire, is nowhere to be seen, and partly because the organization in the kitchen is falling apart. At this point, Carmy gets trapped in the fridge because he never got around to calling the repairman, and Sydney panics as orders pile up. Richie volunteers to run expo for the kitchen. They set a timer for 5 minutes because Sydney says if they don't turn it around in this time, they're screwed. The kitchen pulls itself together, and Carmy misses it because he's locked in the fridge. He panics in there, and he reminds you of Donna from the Christmas dinner. Speaking of Donna, Sugar invites her to the opening, and she shows up and talks with Pete, Sugar's husband, outside, and says she just can't do it. She leaves without entering the restaurant. After the intense conversation, Pete breaks down and cries. The kitchen gets caught up and finishes all the orders successfully. They even manage to send Uncle Jimmy a surprise chocolate banana at Richie's request. This shows the natural affinity Richie has for the service industry, because he remembered something special Uncle Jimmy told him years ago, and he delivered on it. Fact tells Claire that Carmy is trapped in the walk-in, and she goes in to see how he's doing. He's talking to himself and he's saying that he can't be in a relationship because he's a psycho. He doesn't realize Claire is on the other side of the door, and this breaks her heart. Then he listens to the voicemail that he ignored initially from Claire. Her voicemail is heartfelt. She tells him he's wonderful, and she's so excited for him. And she says that Mikey would have been proud with what he's done. It's a gut punch. We close on Marcus, looking at the every second counts sign and smiling. But we also see that he missed many calls from his mother's nurse. There is a bittersweet ending to Season 2, with a lot of success balanced by heartbreak and conflict. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.